Hey guys, today we are going to be reading from the New Revised Standard with Apocrypha, the Deuterocanonical. I think I'm finally saying them right. Additions to Esther. There are 10 of them. I'm not sure. I kind of scrolled through and it looks like they're like medium length compared to what I've been reading versus too long or too short. So I'm going to do 1 through 5 and then we'll do 6 through 10 next time. But right now, so we'll see how this goes. Okay, or I'll read more if it's shorter. Okay, so additions to Esther 1. In the second year of the reign of Artaxerxes the Great, on the first day of Nisan, it looks like Nisan, Mordecai, son of Jar, son of Shammai, son of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin, had a dream. He was a Jew living in the city of Susa, a great man, serving in the court of the king. He was one of the captives whom King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had brought from Jerusalem with King Jeconiah of Judea. And this was his dream: noises and confusion, thunders and earthquake, tumult on the earth. Then 2 great dragons came forward, both ready to fight, and they roared terribly. At their roaring, every nation prepared for war to fight against the righteous nation. It was a day of darkness and gloom, of tribulation and distress, affliction and great tumult on the earth. And the whole righteous nation was troubled. They feared the evils that threatened them and were ready to perish. Then they cried out to God, and at their outcry, as though from a tiny spring, there came a great river with abundant water. Light came, and the sun rose, and the lowly were exalted and devoured those held in honor. So this is basically Revelation, like prophecy, because it's in Esther. Mordecai saw in his dream what God had determined to do, and after he awoke, he had it on his mind, seeking all day to understand it in every detail. Now Mordecai took his rest in the courtyard with Gabbatha and Thara, the 2 eunuchs of the king who kept watch in the courtyard. He overheard their conversation and inquired into their purposes, and learned that they were preparing to lay hands on King Artaxerxes, and he informed the king concerning them. Then the king examined the 2 eunuchs, and after they had confessed it, they were led away to execution. The king made a permanent record of these things, and Mordecai wrote an account of them. And the king ordered Mordecai to serve in the court and rewarded him for these things. But Hannah, son of Hammedatha, a Bogian, who was in great honor with the king, determined to injure Mordecai and his people because of the 2 eunuchs of the king. This happened in the days of Ahasuerus, the same Ahasuerus who ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne in the citadel of Susa, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his officials and ministers. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles and governors of the provinces were present. Sorry, I think I just messed that up for you guys. Like, I'm trying to move it so I can read it, but like, then you don't see me. Okay. Susa, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his officials and ministers. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles and governors of the provinces were present, while he displayed the great wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and pomp of his majesty for many days, 180 days in all. When these days were completed, the king gave for all the people present in the citadel of Susa, both great and small, a banquet lasting for 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white cotton curtains and blue hangings tied with cords of fine linen, and purple to silver rings and marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and colored stones. Drinks were served in golden goblets of different kinds, and the royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the king. Drinking was by flagons without restraint, for the king had given orders to all the officials of his palace to do as each one desired. Furthermore, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the palace of King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbana, Bigtha, and Abagatha, sorry, I'm going to get it right, Sethar and Carcass, the 7 eunuchs who attended him, to bring Queen Vashti before the king wearing the royal crown in order to show the peoples and the officials her beauty, for she was fair to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command conveyed by the eunuchs. And this the king was enraged. At this the king was enraged, and his anger burned within him. Then the king consulted the sages who knew the laws, for this was the king's procedure toward all who were versed in law and custom. And those next to him were Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memkan, the 7 officials of Persia and Media who had access to the king and sat first in the kingdom. According to the law, what is to be done to Queen Vashti because she has not performed the command of King Ahasuerus conveyed by the eunuchs? Then Memucan, son in the presence of the king and the officials, not only has Queen Vashti done wrong to the king, but also to the officials and the other peoples who are in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For this debt of the queen will be made known to all women, causing them to look with contempt on their husbands, since they will say King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, and she did not come. This very day, the noble ladies of Persia and Media who have heard of the queen's behavior will rebel against the king's officials, and there will be no end of contempt and wrath. If it pleases the king, let a royal order go out from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it may not be altered, that Vashti is never again to come before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. So when the decree made by the king is proclaimed throughout all his kingdom, vast as it is, all women will give honor to their husbands, high and low alike. This advice pleased the king and the officials, and the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to every province in its own script, and to every people in its own language, declaring that every man should be master in his own house. Don't necessarily agree with that, but I get you need to be the head of the household, but I don't like the word master because then it just makes your wife sound like a slave. Okay, additions to Esther 2. After these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus had abated, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's servants who attended him said, let beautiful young virgins be sought out for the king, and let the king appoint commissioners in all the provinces of this kingdom to gather all the beautiful young virgins to the harem in the citadel of Susa under custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women. Let their cosmetic treatments be given them. And let the girl who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This pleased the king, and he did so. Now there was a Jew in the citadel of Susa, whose name was Mordecai, son of Jar, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem among the captives carried away with King Jeconiah of Judah, whom King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had carried away. Mordecai had brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his cousin, for she had neither father nor mother. The girl was fair and beautiful, and when her father and her mother died, Mordecai adopted her as her own daughter. So when the king's order and his edict were proclaimed, and when many young women were gathered in the citadel of Susa in custody of Haggai, Esther also was taken into the king's palace and put in custody of Haggai, who had charge of the woman. The girl pleased him and won his favor, and he quickly provided her with her cosmetic treatments and her portion of food, and with 7 chosen maids from the king's palace, and advanced her and her maids to be the best place in the harem. Esther did not reveal her people or kindred, for Mordecai had charged her not to tell. Every day, Mordecai would walk around in front of the court of the harem to learn how Esther was and how she fared. The turn came for each girl to go into King Ahasuerus's after being 12 months under the regulations for the women, since this was the regular period of their cosmetic treatment, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics for women. When the girl went in to the king, she was given whatever she asked for to take with her for the harem to the king's palace. In the evening, she went in. Then in the morning, she came back to the second harem in custody of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines. She did not go into the king again unless the king delighted in her and she was summoned by name. When the turn came for Esther, daughter of, anybody else get that? Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had adopted her as his own daughter, to go into the king, she asked for nothing except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who had charge, it's still fun, he had charge, I feel like it should have been into, but it can work both ways, really. Okay, in charge of the woman advised. Now Esther was admired by all who saw her. When Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus in his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women of all the other virgins. She won his favor and devotion, so that he set the royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king gave a great banquet to all his officials and ministers, Esther's banquet. He also granted a holiday to the provinces and gave gifts with royal liberality. When the virgins were being gathered together, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Now Esther had not revealed her kindred or her people, as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther obeyed Mordecai, just as when she was brought up by him. In those days, while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who guarded the threshold, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Ahasuerus. But the matter came to the knowledge of Mordecai, and he told it to Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in the name of Mordecai. When the affair was investigated and found to be so, both the men were hanged on the gallows. It was recorded in the book of the Annals in the presence of the king. Additions to Esther 3. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the officials who were with him. And all the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and did obeisance to the Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai did not bow down or do obeisance. Then the king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" When they spoke to him day after day and he would not listen to them, they told Haman in order to see what Mordecai's words would avail, for he had told them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or do obeisance, what does this word even mean? Let's look this up. I've never even seen this word before. I read it fast and it looked like obedience, but that's not what it is. Okay, it is pronounced obeisance. It's differential respect, homage, worship, adoration, reference, veneration, a gesture expressing deferential respect, such as a bow of courtesy. So it's obeisance. Obeisance. Okay. Back to this. To him, Haman was infuriated, but he thought it beneath him to lay hands on Mordecai alone. So having been told who Mordecai's people were, Haman plotted to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast Pur, which means the lot, before Haman for the day and for the month, and the lot fell on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, "There is a certain people scattered and separated among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of every other people, and they do not keep the king's laws. So that is not appropriate for the king to tolerate. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued for their destruction, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who have charge of the king's business, so that they may put it into the king's treasuries." So the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. The king said to Haman, "The money is given to you, and the people as well, to do with them as it seems good to you." Then the king's secretaries were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and an indict according to all that Haman commanded. This, I'm pretty sure there was supposed to be a space there, but whoever typed this, Haman commanded, but it's Haman commanded, was written to the king's satraps, and to the governors over all the provinces and to the officials of all the peoples, to every province in its own script and every people in its own language. It was written in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's ring. Letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces, giving orders to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all Jews, young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. Didn't realize there was like a mass killing of the Jews this many times. And okay, this is a copy of the letter of the great king. Artaxerxes writes the following to the governors of the 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia and to the officials under them. Having become ruler of many nations and master of the whole world, not elated with presumption of authority, but always acting reasonably and with kindness, I have determined to settle the lives of my subjects in lasting tranquility. And in order to make my kingdom peaceable and open to travel throughout all its extent, to restore the peace desired by all people. When I asked my counselors how this might be accomplished, Haman, who excels among us in sound judgment and is distinguished for his unchanging goodwill and steadfast fidelity, and has attained the second place in the kingdom, pointed out to us that among all the nations in the world there is scattered a certain hostile people who have laws contrary to those of every nation and continually disregard the ordinances of kings, so that the unifying of the kingdom that we honorably intend cannot be brought about. We understand that this people and it alone stands constantly in opposition to every nation, perversely following a strange manner of life and laws, and is ill disposed to our government, doing all the harm they can so that our kingdom may not attain stability. Therefore, we have decreed that those indicated to you in the letters written by Haman, who is in charge of affairs and is our second father, and just want to take a red pen. Is our second father, shall all wives and children included be utterly destroyed by the swords of their enemies without pity or restraint on the 14th day of the 12th month, Adar, of this present year, so that those who have long been hostile and remain so may in a single day go down in violence to Hades and leave our government completely secure and untroubled hereafter. A copy of the document was to be issued as a decree in every province by proclamation, calling on all the peoples to be ready for that day. The couriers went quickly by order of the king, and the decree was issued in the citadel of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the citadel of Susa was thrown into confusion. All right, we are on Additions to Esther 4, chapter 4. Okay, when Mordecai learned all that had been done, Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went through the city wailing with a loud and bitter cry. He went up to the entrance to the king's gate, for no one might enter the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. In every province where the king's command and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting and weeping and lamenting, and most of them lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's maids and her eunuchs came and told her, the queen was deeply distressed. She sent garments to clothe Mordecai so that he might take off his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther called for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, who had been appointed to attend her, and ordered him to go to Mordecai to learn what was happening and why. Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened to him and the exact sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasuries for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the written decree issued in Susa for their destruction, that he might show it to Esther, explain it to her, and charge her to go to the king to make supplication to him and entreat him for her people. Hathach went and told Esther what Mordecai had said. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a message from Mordecai, saying, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes into the king inside the inner court, goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is but one law. All alike are to be put to death. Only if the king holds out the golden scepter to someone may that person live. I myself have not been called to come into the king for the 30 days. Tired. When they told Mordecai and Esther what Esther had said, Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, "Do not think that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silence at such a time as this, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another quarter. But you and your father's family will perish. Who knows? Perhaps you have come to the royal dignity for just such a time as this." Then Esther said in reply to Mordecai, "Go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf, and neither eat nor drink for 30 days, night or day. And my maids will also fast as you do. After that, I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." Mordecai then went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. Then Mordecai prayed to the Lord, calling to remembrance all the works of the Lord. He said, "O Lord, Lord, you rule as king over all things, for the universe is in your power, and there is no one who cannot oppose you when it is your will to save Israel. For you have made heaven and earth and every wonderful thing under heaven. You are Lord of all, and there is no one who can resist you, the Lord. You know all things. You know, O Lord, that it was not in insolence or pride or for any love of glory that I did this and refused to bow down to this proud Haman. For I would have been willing to kiss the soles of his feet to save Israel. But if I did... Where did I just leave off? But if I did... Sorry, guys. But if I did, and I will not do these things in pride, I will not bow down to anyone. But I did this so that I might not set human glory above the glory of God. And I will not bow down to anyone but you, who are my Lord. And I will not do these things in pride. And now, O Lord God and King, God of Abraham, spare your people. For the eyes of our foes are upon us to annihilate us. And they desire to destroy the inheritance that has been yours from the beginning. Do not neglect your portion, which you have redeemed for yourself out of the land of Egypt. Hear my prayer and have mercy upon your inheritance. Turn out our mourning into feasting, that we may live and sing praise to your name. O Lord, do not destroy the lips for who praise you. And all Israel cried out mightily, for their death was before their eyes. Then Queen Esther, seized with deadly anxiety, fled to the Lord. She took off her splendid apparel and put on the garments of distress and mourning. And instead of costly perfumes, she covered her head with ashes and dung. And she utterly humbled her body. Every part that she loved to adorn, she covered with her tangled hair. She prayed to the Lord God of Israel and said, "O my Lord, you only are king. Help me. Who am I alone and have no... help me. Who am I alone and have no helper but you? For my danger is in my hand. Ever since I was born, I have heard in the tribe of my family that you, O Lord, took Israel out of all the nations and our ancestors from among all their forebears for an everlasting inheritance, and that you did for them all that you promised. And now we have sinned before you, and you have handed us over to our enemies because we glorified their gods. You are righteous, O Lord. And now they are not satisfied with... Okay. They're satisfied. Oh my gosh. I'm literally so tired. I'm falling asleep. Okay. To abolish what your mouth has ordained and to destroy your inheritance, to stop the mouths of those who praise you, and to quench your altar and the glory of your house, to open the mouths of the nations for the praise of vain idols, and to magnify forever a mortal king. O Lord, do not surrender your scepter to what has no being, and do not let them laugh at our downfall, but turn their plan against them and make an example of him. When began this against us? Who began this against us? O Lord, do not surrender for your scepter. Wait, did I skip this part? No. O Lord, do not surrender your scepter to what has no being, and do not let them laugh at our downfall, but turn their plan against them and make an example of him who began this against us. Remember, O Lord, make yourself known in this time of our affliction, and give me courage, O Lord, and the gods and master of all dominion. Put eloquent speech in my mouth before the lion in turn. What is happening with my mouse? No. Sorry, guys. Turn his heart to hate the man who is fighting against us, so that there may be an end of him and those who agree with him. But save us by your hand and help me, who am alone and have no helper but you, O Lord. You have knowledge of all things, and you know that prayer. Why do I do not see it? And you know that I hate the splendor of the wicked and harbor the million per second, uncircumcised and any alien. You know my necessity, that I harbor the sign of my proud position, which is upon my head on days when I appear in public. I arbor it like a filthy rag, and I do not wear it on the days when I'm at leisure. And your servant okay. One of you guys been meeting in this car for me. Lifting his face, flushed with splendor, he looked at her in fierce anger. The queen faltered and turned pale and faint and collapsed on the head of the maid who went in front of her. Then God changed the spirit of the king to gentleness, and in alarm he sprang from his throne and took her in his arms until she came to herself. He comforted her with soothing words and said to her, "What is it, Esther? I am your husband. Take courage. She shall not die. For our law applies only to our subjects. Come near." Then he raised the golden scepter and touched her neck with it. He embraced her and said, "Speak to me." She said to him, "I saw you, my lord, like an angel of God, and my heart was shaken with fear at your glory. For you are wonderful, for my lord, and your countenance is full of grace." And while she was speaking, she fainted and fell. Then the king was agitated with all his servants, and all his servants tried to comfort her. Okay, last one, guys. Addition to Esther 5. This one does not look that long. I think they're going to be okay. Okay, addition to Esther chapter 5. On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, opposite the king's hall. This king was sitting on his royal throne inside the palace, opposite the entrance to the palace. As soon as the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, she won his favor, and he held out to her the golden scepter. Then Esther approached and touched the top of the scepter. The king said to her, "What is this, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be moved. It shall be given you, even to the half of my kingdom." Then Esther said, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to a banquet that I have prepared for the king." Then the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, so that we may do as Esther desires." So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. While they were drinking wine, the king said to Esther, "What is your petition? It shall be granted. And what is your request? Even to..." I lost my place again, guys. Haman went out day after day in good spirits. Okay, Haman went out out that day, happy and in good spirits. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate and observed that he neither rose nor trembled before him, he was infuriated with Mordecai. He was infuriated with us. Haman restrained himself and went home. Then he sent and called for his friends and his wife Zeresh. And Haman recounted to them the splendor of his riches, the number of his sons, all the promotions with which the king had honored him. The king had honored him, and how he had advanced him above the officials and the ministers of the king. Haman said, "Even Queen Esther, let no one but myself come with me, the king, to the banquet that she prepared tomorrow, as I am invited by her together with the king. Yet all this does me no good, so long as I am invited. Is tomorrow also I am invited by her." I'll let you think about it. The party coming up. Up to the king. Okay. I don't know. Somebody put him up to that, but I don't remember having to do it. Okay. Nevertheless, Haman restricted himself and went home. Then he came and called for his friends and his wife Zeresh. And Haman recounted to them the splendor of his riches, the number of his sons, all the promotions with which the king had honored him, and how he had advanced him above the officials and the ministries of the work. Taking a nap after this. Okay, and Haman recounted to them the splendor could be of that. Haman added, "Even Queen Esther, let no one but myself come with the king to the banquet that she prepared. Tomorrow also I am invited by her together with the king. Yet all this is done," which means that you really don't have to go to the bathroom like anything. I'm so chill today. Even Queen Esther, let yet all this does me no good, so long as I see the Jew Mordecai sitting at the king's gate. Chapter 14. Then so this is the last sentence, or last section. Then his wife Zeresh, all his friends said to him, "Let no one but myself come with the kings to the banquet that she prepared tomorrow. Also, I am invited by her together with the king. Yet all he does me no good. All this does me no good, so long as I see the Jeff Mordecai sitting in the kayak's gate, when then his wife Zariah, who and all her friends said to him, let a gallows 50 cubits high be made, and in the morning tell the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. Then go with the king to find Mordecai hanged on it. Then go with the kings of the banquet. This advice because Mordecai on it. Then go with the king into the banquet in good spirits. This advice pleased Haman, and he had the gallows made. Okay, so we will do additions to Esther 6 the next time. Have a good one, guys. I'm going to try to fall asleep. Okay, bye.